The coins clinked against each other as Olivia Mitchell's trembling fingers counted them on the convenience store counter. $27.43 in quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. The last of her money until payday next week. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across her exhausted face. At 26, she looked a decade older, dark circles ringing her eyes from countless sleepless nights with her 6-month-old daughter Emma. "I'm sorry about the coins," Olivia whispered to the cashier, a middle-aged woman whose name tag read Betty. The line behind her was growing and she could feel the weight of impatient stares pressing against her back. Betty smiled kindly. "Don't you worry, honey. Money is money." She began counting the pile of coins with practiced efficiency. Olivia clutched the can of baby formula tightly. Emma had been fussier than usual lately, refusing her regular brand. The pediatrician suggested trying a different formula, this specialty kind that cost nearly twice as much. It was a devastating blow to Olivia's meticulously planned budget, but Emma's health came first. Always. Life hadn't always been this hard. 3 years ago, Olivia had been climbing the corporate ladder, working in marketing for various businesses around Boston. She had just landed a promising position when she met James at a networking event. Handsome, charming, and seemingly kind, James swept her off her feet. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage within 6 months. Then came the gradual changes. James grew controlling, isolating her from friends and family. When she became pregnant, a surprise but a welcome one, things deteriorated further. 2 months before Emma was born, she came home to find the apartment emptied of his belongings in a coldly written note. "I never wanted to be a father." The sharp voice of a man behind her cut through her memories. "Is there a problem here?" Olivia turned slightly, clutching the formula tighter. The man standing behind her was tall and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His steel gray eyes looked irritated, and he checked his watch with pointed impatience. But there was something else about him. Something that made the air feel heavier. An authority that went beyond expensive clothing. "No problem, sir," Betty said, still counting coins. "Just give us a minute." The man sighed, a sound that carried weight. "I have business to attend to." Olivia felt her face burn with shame. "I'm sorry," she murmured, not meeting his eyes. "I can step aside if you want to go ahead." Something in her voice made the man pause. He glanced at what she was purchasing, then at her worn coat and the simple gold wedding band she still wore, unable to part with it despite everything. It had been her grandmother's. Betty finished counting. "You're short $3.18, honey." Olivia's stomach dropped. She had counted wrong in her exhaustion. "Oh, I—" Her voice faltered as she frantically searched her purse, knowing there was nothing more to find. She would have to put the formula back and buy the cheaper brand that made Emma sick. "Add whatever she needs to my purchase," the man behind her said suddenly, his tone markedly different, softer, but still carrying that undercurrent of command. Olivia turned in surprise. "No, please, that's not necessary." "It's $3, he said with a dismissive wave, pulling out a money clip thick with bills. He handed a 20 to Betty. "Keep the change." "Thank you," Olivia whispered, blinking back tears. "I promise I'll pay you back." The man studied her face for a moment, his gray eyes sharp and assessing. "Do I know you from somewhere?" Olivia shook her head, gathering the bagged formula. "I don't think so." As she hurried toward the exit, her phone rang. It was Mrs. Abernathy from downstairs, who watched Emma when Olivia picked up evening shifts at the diner. Her heart raced. Mrs. Abernathy never called unless it was an emergency. "Olivia, you need to come home now. Emma's burning up with fever." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "I'm coming right now," she managed to say before ending the call. She rushed outside into the cold November air, her mind racing. The bus wouldn't come for another 20 minutes, and a taxi would cost money she didn't have. "Is everything all right?" The man from the store had followed her outside. Up close, there was something vaguely familiar about him, but Olivia couldn't place it through her panic. "My baby's sick. I need to get home, but I live 15 blocks away." She was already walking, calculating how fast she could make it on foot. "I have a car. I'll take you." Olivia hesitated. Getting into a car with a stranger went against every safety rule, but her daughter needed her. "Why would you help me?" The man's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained unreadable. Because I know what it's like to lose family. He extended his hand. Vincenzo Valenti. People call me Enzo. The name meant nothing to Olivia, though something in the way he said it suggested it should. She shook his hand anyway. Olivia Mitchell. A flash of recognition crossed his face. Mitchell? Wait, Olivia Mitchell, you worked in marketing. I remember you. She swallowed hard. Yes, but I really need to go now. Enzo's expression was unreadable as he guided her to a sleek black vintage Cadillac parked nearby. Get in, you can explain on the way. The interior of the car was warm and smelled of expensive leather and faintly of cigars. As Enzo pulled away from the curb, Olivia gave him directions in a shaky voice. Her mind was racing. How did he know her? And why was he helping? You were good at your job, Enzo said quietly as he drove, his hand steady on the wheel. I remember hearing your name mentioned. People noticed your work. Olivia stared out the window. That feels like another lifetime. Things change, he said simply, sometimes fast. The way he said it suggested he knew about sudden change, about life taking unexpected turns. Olivia found herself wanting to explain, to fill the heavy silence in the car. In halting sentences, she told him about James, the isolation, the pregnancy, the abandonment. With each word, Enzo's knuckles grew whiter on the steering wheel, though his expression remained carved from stone. You never told anyone what was happening, he said. It wasn't a question. I was ashamed, she admitted, and by the time he left, I was 7 months pregnant with no support system. I couldn't face going back to work. Enzo pulled up in front of a rundown apartment building. Before she could thank him and rush out, he turned to her with an intensity that stopped her cold. Why didn't you ever ask for help? He asked, his voice strangely emotional despite its low tone. There are people who would have helped. Something in his tone made Olivia look at him more carefully. There was more to his question than casual concern, something personal in his eyes that she couldn't quite read. Then her phone rang again. Mrs. Abernathy. Emma needed her. Whatever Vincenzo Valenti meant by his question would have to wait. I have to go, she said, grabbing the formula and rushing from the car. As she ran toward the building entrance, she didn't see Enzo make a phone call or hear him say quietly, cancel everything. Something more important came up. Olivia burst through the door of her small apartment, breathless from taking the stairs two at a time. Mrs. Abernathy, a silver-haired woman in her 60s, was pacing the worn carpet with Emma bundled in a blanket. Thank goodness you're here, Mrs. Abernathy said immediately, transferring the whimpering baby into Olivia's arms. Her fever's gotten worse in the last half hour. Emma's normally rosy cheeks were flushed an alarming red, her wispy blonde curls damp with sweat. When she opened her eyes and saw her mother, her cries softened slightly, but her tiny body felt like it was burning up. How high is it? Olivia asked, already moving toward the bathroom where she kept the children's medicine. 103.2 when I checked 5 minutes ago, Mrs. Abernathy replied, following close behind. I tried the fever reducer you left, but she spit most of it out. Olivia's heart raced. She'd been through fevers with Emma before, but this one seemed different, more intense, more frightening. I think we need to go to the emergency room, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Mrs. Abernathy nodded. I'll call a cab. Wait, Olivia stopped her, remembering the man downstairs. Had he left? Would he still be willing to help? There might be someone who can drive us. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Abernathy opened it to reveal Vincenzo Valenti standing in the hallway, looking decidedly out of place among the peeling paint and flickering overhead light. I thought you might need help, he said simply, his gray eyes moving to the feverish baby in Olivia's arms. Relief washed over Olivia. Emma's burning up. We need to get her to Children's Hospital. Without hesitation, Enzo stepped forward. My car's downstairs. Let's go. 10 minutes later, they were moving through Boston traffic, Enzo driving with focused intensity, while Olivia sat in the back seat with Emma cradled against her chest. Mrs. Abernathy had stayed behind, promising to prepare the apartment for their return. She's never been this hot before, Olivia whispered, more to herself than to Enzo. She stroked Emma's cheek gently, trying to soothe her increasingly weak cries. It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's here. We're getting help. Enzo's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. We're almost there. 5 more minutes. Olivia nodded gratefully, wondering at the strange turn her day had taken. Why was this man, whoever he really was, going so far out of his way to help her? And what had he meant by that question? Why didn't you ever ask for help? At the hospital, Enzo's presence seemed to expedite everything. Whether it was his confident demeanor or the expensive suit or something else entirely, nurses and doctors responded immediately. Within minutes, Emma was being examined by a pediatrician while Olivia hovered anxiously nearby. She has an ear infection, the doctor explained, after a thorough examination. A pretty severe one, which is why her fever is so high. We'll start her on antibiotics right away. Relief made Olivia's knees weak. So she'll be okay? Kids are resilient, the doctor assured her with a smile. The fever should come down within 24 hours, and she'll start feeling better in a couple of days. While Emma received her first dose of medicine, Olivia stepped out into the waiting room where Enzo sat, his tie loosened slightly and his jacket draped over the chair beside him. He stood when he saw her. She has an ear infection, Olivia told him. They're giving her antibiotics now. Good, he said, and the genuine relief in his voice surprised her. Do you need to stay overnight? Olivia shook her head. They said we can go home once the paperwork is finished and they've written prescriptions. Then reality crashed back. Prescriptions meant money. Money she didn't have until payday. Her face must have shown her worry because Enzo stepped closer. What is it? Nothing, she said automatically. The defense mechanism of someone used to handling problems alone. But something in his steady gaze broke through her reserve. The prescriptions. I don't think I can cover them until Friday when I get paid. I'll take care of it, Enzo said without hesitation. You've already done too much. I can't accept, Olivia, he interrupted gently. Let me help. There was something in his expression, a sadness, a determination that stopped her protests. She nodded wordlessly, too exhausted to argue further. 2 hours later, Enzo drove them back to Olivia's apartment, Emma sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, her fever already beginning to respond to the medication. The car was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and Emma's occasional snuffles. Thank you, Olivia said softly. I don't know what I would have done today without your help. Enzo's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I'm glad I was there. After a pause, he added, I meant what I asked earlier, Olivia. Why didn't you tell anyone what was happening? There were resources, people who could have helped. Olivia looked down at her daughter's sleeping face. Shame is a powerful silencer, she said finally. And James, he was very good at making me feel like everything was my fault. By the time I realized how isolated I'd become, it seemed too late. It's never too late, Enzo said, his voice carrying an intensity that made her look up. As they stopped at a red light, he turned to face her fully. My sister went through something similar. Abusive husband, cut off from family, nowhere to turn. He paused, his jaw tightening. The difference is she didn't make it out. The simple statement was hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken grief. I'm so sorry, Olivia whispered. It was 7 years ago, Enzo said as the light turned green. She had a daughter too, my niece Lily. She's 9 now, lives with my parents. Understanding dawned on Olivia. That's why he had helped her today. She reminded him of his sister. The realization brought both comfort and a strange disappointment she didn't want to examine too closely. You were nominated for a leadership position right before you left, Enzo said, changing the subject slightly. Did you know that? People were impressed with your work. Olivia's breath caught. She had worked so hard for that opportunity, never knowing she'd achieved it. Another casualty of James's control. Life takes unexpected turns, she said softly. They had reached her apartment building. Enzo insisted on carrying the sleeping Emma while Olivia gathered the prescriptions in her purse. As they climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, Olivia was acutely aware of how shabby the building must look to someone like him. At her door, Mrs. Abernathy greeted them with concerned questions about Emma's condition. While Olivia put Emma to bed in the small room they shared, she could hear Enzo and Mrs. Abernathy talking quietly in the living room. When she returned, Enzo was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. He turned as she entered, and there was a new resolve in his expression. Olivia, I have a proposition for you, he said. I'm launching a new community initiative. I need someone with marketing experience to head it up. The position comes with flexible hours and childcare arrangements. Olivia stared at him, speechless. Was he offering her a job after everything? I don't want charity, she said finally, her pride still intact despite everything. This isn't charity, Enzo replied firmly. This is recognizing ability and making an offer. You were good at what you did. I need someone like that. Before she could respond, Emma's cries came from the bedroom. I need to check on her, Olivia said, torn between hope and suspicion. As she turned toward the bedroom, Enzo said quietly, There's something else you should know, Olivia. Something about your husband, James. I think you should sit down for this. Olivia froze mid-step, her daughter's cries momentarily drowned out by the rushing of blood in her ears. Something about James? After nearly a year of complete silence, the mere mention of his name was enough to make her heart race with anxiety. Let me check on Emma first, she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. In the small bedroom, she found Emma standing in her crib, her cheeks still flushed, but her cries more irritated than pained. The medicine was working. Olivia changed her diaper, gave her a cool sippy cup of water, and sang softly until Emma's eyelids grew heavy again. Once the baby was settled, Olivia returned to the living room where Enzo waited, his tall frame making the small space seem even more cramped than usual. Mrs. Abernathy had tactfully excused herself, promising to check in tomorrow. Olivia sat on the edge of her worn couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. What about James? She asked directly, preferring to face whatever it was head on. Enzo sat in the chair across from her. When you told me his name in the car, it sounded familiar. I couldn't place it at first, but while you were with Emma at the hospital, I made some calls. He paused, choosing his words carefully. James Barrett has applied for a position with one of my business associates. Senior position. He listed you as a reference on his application. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What? Olivia whispered. That's impossible. He moved to California after he left. At least, that's what his sister told me when I tried to find him for child support. He's back in Boston, Enzo confirmed, and he listed you as a reference. Anger flashed through her, hot and sudden. Me? After everything he did? She stood abruptly, pacing the small room. He abandoned his pregnant wife, emptied our joint savings account, and hasn't sent a single dollar for his daughter's care. And he has the audacity to use my name? There's more, Enzo said quietly. His resume claims he held a senior marketing position for the last 3 years. The position you had, essentially, but elevated. He's fabricated an entire career history. Olivia sank back onto the couch, stunned. He always was a convincing liar. His interview is scheduled for next week, Enzo continued. With his qualifications, fake as they are, he would likely have gotten the job. The salary starts at $120,000. The figure hung in the air between them, more money than Olivia had ever made, even during her best years, and all while she counted pennies for baby formula. What are you going to do, she asked finally. That depends on you, Enzo replied. Legally, I can't refuse to consider him based on his personal history, but falsifying employment records is grounds for immediate disqualification. If you were willing to provide a statement about his fraudulent claims, it would give clear grounds to reject his application. You want me to expose him? It wasn't a question. I want you to do whatever you feel is right, Enzo said. But yes, if you're willing to provide a statement, it would help. Olivia stood again, moving to the window. The streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk below. Somewhere out there, James was living his life as if Emma didn't exist, as if the promises he'd made to Olivia had never been spoken. He doesn't deserve that job, she said finally, but more importantly, he doesn't deserve to get away with lying. She turned back to Enzo. I'll write the statement. Relief crossed his face. Thank you. I'll have someone pick it up tomorrow. Why did you really come up here tonight, Enzo? Olivia asked suddenly. You could have called to tell me about James. You could have sent an email about the job offer. Why are you really here? Enzo's expression softened. Because 17 months ago, a talented woman disappeared, and today I found her counting pennies for baby formula. Because when I recognized you, I realized I had failed to help when it might have mattered. He hesitated, then continued more quietly. Because you remind me that second chances are possible, and I need to believe that right now. There was something vulnerable in his admission, something that hinted at deeper waters. Olivia found herself wanting to know more about this man who had upended her day in the most unexpected ways. Are you always this involved in helping people? She asked, a small smile softening her words. Only when it matters, he replied, returning her smile. The moment stretched between them, comfortable and somehow familiar, until Emma's monitor crackled with the sound of restless whimpers. I should go, Enzo said, standing. You both need rest. At the door, he hesitated. About the job offer, it's genuine, Olivia, and take a few days to think about it, but know that the position is yours if you want it. Thank you, she said, meaning it, for everything. The help with Emma, the ride, the medicine, and now this unexpected opportunity. I'll think about it. After Enzo left, Olivia checked on Emma one last time before collapsing onto her own bed, emotionally and physically drained. Sleep claimed her almost instantly, but her dreams were troubled. James's face morphing into shadowy figures. Enzo standing just out of reach. Emma crying for her from somewhere she couldn't find. She woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains and the sound of her phone buzzing insistently. The screen showed a number she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered. Olivia Mitchell? A woman's crisp, professional voice came through the line. Yes, this is she. This is Sandra Russo, Mr. Valenti's associate. He asked me to check on you and Emma this morning. How is she feeling? Surprised by the follow-up, Olivia glanced at the baby monitor. Emma was still sleeping peacefully. She's better, I think. Still sleeping. I'm glad to hear it, Sandra replied, her tone warming slightly. Mr. Valenti has asked me to deliver some paperwork regarding the position he discussed with you, along with the statement about James Barrett. Would noon work for you? Yes, that's fine, Olivia said, wondering just how much Sandra knew about her situation. Excellent. Oh, and one more thing. Mr. Valenti would like to know if you and Emma would join him for dinner this evening. He mentioned wanting to discuss the community initiative in more detail. The invitation caught Olivia off guard. Dinner with Emma? He specifically mentioned including her, Sandra confirmed. He suggested Carino's at 6:30. They have private dining rooms if you're concerned about Emma's comfort. Carino's was one of Boston's most upscale Italian restaurants, the kind of place Olivia hadn't been able to afford even before Emma came along. I don't think I have anything appropriate to wear, she admitted. Don't worry about that, Sandra said easily. Business casual is fine. Mr. Valenti will be coming directly from meetings. After ending the call, Olivia checked on Emma, relieved to find her fever had dropped significantly overnight. The baby smiled up at her mother, reaching with grabby hands to be picked up. Good morning, sunshine, Olivia cooed, lifting her daughter. Feeling better today? Emma babbled happily in response, her bright blue eyes showing no signs of yesterday's distress. The morning passed in a blur of normal routines interspersed with preparations for Sandra's visit and the unexpected dinner invitation. Olivia found herself rummaging through her closet, assessing her limited wardrobe options with a critical eye she hadn't used in months. The nicest thing she owned was a simple navy dress she'd worn to a friend's wedding 2 years ago. It would have to do. At precisely noon, a knock came at her door. Sandra Russo was younger than Olivia had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with sleek dark hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing as she took in her apartment. Miss Mitchell, a pleasure to meet you, she said, extending a hand. As Olivia invited her in, Sandra added in a lower voice, I should mention that I've worked with Mr. Valenti for 7 years. In that time, he has never personally intervened in a situation like this. He's a private man who keeps his distance. This is unusual. Olivia wasn't sure how to respond to this revelation. He mentioned his sister went through something similar to my situation, she offered hesitantly. Sandra's expression softened slightly. Yes, Rebecca. Her death changed him profoundly. She placed a sleek folder on the small dining table. These are the details of the position he's offering, along with the statement regarding James Barrett, for you to review and sign if you agree with the content. As Olivia scanned the documents, her eyes widened. The job description was impressive enough, but the salary figure made her breath catch. It was nearly triple what she'd been making before she left the workforce. There must be some mistake, she said, pointing to the number. Sandra shook her head. No mistake. That's the approved salary for this position. It seems excessive for community relations work, Olivia pressed. A slight smile touched Sandra's lips. The position reports directly to Mr. Valenti and requires extensive experience in marketing, project management, and community building, all skills you've demonstrated. The salary is appropriate for the responsibility. Before Olivia could argue further, Emma began fussing in her playpen. Sandra's eyes moved to the baby, her expression unreadable. "She's beautiful," she commented as Olivia picked Emma up. "She has your smile." The observation was unexpected and touching. "Thank you," Olivia said softly. Sandra checked her watch. "I should be going. Mr. Valenti will meet you at Carino's at 6:30. The reservation is under his name." She paused at the door. "One more thing, Miss Mitchell. The statement about James Barrett. There's something you should know before you sign it." Olivia felt a chill at Sandra's tone. "What is it?" "James Barrett isn't just applying to one position. He's being actively recruited by several major companies in Boston, all using the same fraudulent resume." Sandra hesitated. "And he's engaged to be married to Catherine Montrose." The name hit Olivia like a physical blow. Catherine Montrose, daughter of Richard Montrose, one of Boston's wealthiest real estate developers. "I see," Olivia said, her voice barely audible over the sudden roaring in her ears. "Mr. Valenti felt you should have all the information before making your decision," Sandra said gently. "I'll see you this evening." As the door closed behind Sandra, Olivia sank onto the couch, Emma squirming in her lap. The pieces were falling into place now. Enzo's unusual interest, the generous job offer, the dinner invitation. This wasn't just about her talent or his sister's memory. This was about power and money and connections. And Olivia had just become a piece in a much larger game. Carino's restaurant glowed with warm light against the darkening evening sky as Olivia approached, Emma secured in her carrier. She had spent the afternoon in a state of agitated contemplation, alternating between anger at James's continued deception and suspicion about Enzo's true motives. The revelation about Catherine Montrose had been particularly disturbing. Olivia had heard of Catherine, the socialite daughter of one of Boston's most powerful men. The idea that James had managed to ingratiate himself with the Montrose family spoke volumes about his ambition and his charm, the same charm that had once swept Olivia off her feet. She paused outside the restaurant, smoothing down her navy dress with one nervous hand. Emma, thankfully, was in good spirits, her fever gone in and her usual cheerful demeanor restored. Olivia had dressed her in her nicest outfit, a pale yellow dress with tiny embroidered flowers, a gift from Mrs. Abernathy. "We can do this," she whispered to Emma, who responded with a happy gurgle. Taking a deep breath, Olivia pushed open the heavy wooden door. The maitre d' greeted her with professional courtesy, not batting an eye at the baby carrier. "Mitchell, Mr. Valenti is waiting for you in the Tuscany room." He led them through the main dining area, past tables of well-dressed patrons enjoying fine wines and expensive meals. Olivia felt conspicuously out of place, aware of her simple dress and sensible shoes. Emma, however, gazed around with wide-eyed fascination at the chandeliers and flickering candles. The Tuscany room was a small, private dining area, warmly lit with amber-toned fixtures and decorated with tasteful Italian landscapes. Enzo stood as they entered, coming forward immediately to greet them. "Olivia, thank you for coming," he said, his smile genuine. He peered at Emma in her carrier. "And how's our brave little patient tonight?" "Much better," Olivia replied, setting the carrier on a chair. The medicine worked wonders. Enzo had shed his formal business attire for dark slacks and a charcoal dress shirt. The sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. The more casual look suited him, softening his intimidating presence into something more approachable. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the elegantly set table. A high chair had been placed at one end, and Olivia noticed with surprise that a small stuffed bear sat waiting on it. "I hope Emma doesn't mind bears," Enzo said, following her gaze. "My niece Lily suggested it might help." The thoughtfulness of the gesture momentarily disarmed Olivia's prepared defenses. She lifted Emma from her carrier and settled her in the high chair, where the baby immediately grabbed for the bear with delighted hands. Once they were seated, a waiter appeared with menus and a wine list. Enzo ordered a bottle of Pinot Noir, then turned to Olivia. "Everything here is excellent, but their risotto is particularly good." Olivia nodded, scanning the menu without really seeing it. She needed to address the situation before she could think about food. Sandra told me about Catherine Montrose, she said abruptly, setting down her menu, and about James being recruited by other companies. Enzo's expression remained steady. I thought you should know the full situation. What I don't understand is why you care so much, Olivia pressed. James lied on his resume, yes. That's grounds for rejecting his application. But this dinner, the job offer, all of it seems excessive for simply avoiding a bad hire. Enzo took a moment before responding, his gray eyes serious. You're right to question my motives, Olivia. The truth is, this situation has become more complicated than a simple case of resume fraud. He leaned forward slightly. Richard Montrose is not just any investor. He's pushing to gain control of several businesses in Boston, including some of my interests. I don't want that to happen. And you don't want that? Olivia guessed. No, I don't. Montrose views everything as nothing more than financial assets. He would gut operations, eliminate jobs, and focus exclusively on short-term profits. The waiter returned with the wine, going through the ritual of presenting the bottle and pouring a small amount for Enzo to taste. Once he approved and their glasses were filled, Enzo continued. When I discovered James Barrett was engaged to Catherine Montrose, certain things started making sense. James has been feeding information to Montrose. Specifics about operations, vulnerabilities, plans, information that could only have come from someone with insider knowledge. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. How do you know this? Because the information being used against various interests could only have come from someone with specific knowledge that very few people outside certain circles would have. Like a former marketing professional, Olivia said quietly, the implications dawning on her. Enzo nodded. Exactly. James has been using information you shared with him during your marriage to position himself with Montrose and to undermine others. The betrayal cut deep. Even after everything James had already done, Olivia had been proud of the work she'd done in her career. The idea that James had exploited that for his own gain made her stomach turn. So you want me to sign that statement to discredit James and weaken Montrose's position? She concluded, a bitter edge to her voice. Yes, Enzo admitted honestly, but that's not the only reason I offered you the job. Isn't it? Olivia challenged. The community initiative seems conveniently timed. Emma chose that moment to drop her bear, letting out a frustrated cry. Olivia automatically reached down to retrieve it, but Enzo was quicker, picking it up and gently handing it back to the baby with a smile that Emma immediately returned. The community initiative has been in development for months, Enzo said, turning back to Olivia. I was planning to launch it soon, but recent events accelerated the timeline. He took a sip of his wine. I won't pretend there isn't a strategic advantage to certain moves right now, but the position is real, Olivia, and you are genuinely qualified to lead it. The waiter returned to take their orders. Olivia chose the risotto, more to buy time than from any real appetite. As the waiter departed, she studied Enzo's face, searching for signs of deception, but finding only open intensity. Let's say I believe you about the job, she said finally. What happens after I sign the statement about James? What happens to him? He doesn't get positions he's not qualified for. His fraud becomes known to other potential employers, and Richard Montrose discovers that his future son-in-law has been less than honest about his professional credentials. It would destroy him, Olivia said softly. Yes, Enzo agreed without apology. It would. Olivia thought of the empty apartment, the drained bank accounts, the months of struggling alone with a newborn while James moved on without a backward glance. She thought of counting coins for baby formula while he courted a socialite and leveraged stolen information for personal gain. I'll sign it, she said, her decision crystallizing. Not for you or for business strategy, but because it's the truth, and because Emma deserves better than a father who pretends she doesn't exist. Relief washed over Enzo's features. Thank you. Their meals arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics as they ate. Enzo asked about Emma's development, sharing stories of his niece Lily at the same age. Olivia found herself relaxing despite her initial suspicions, drawn in by his genuine interest and surprising warmth with Emma, who had taken an immediate liking to him. As they shared a tiramisu for dessert, Emma beginning to doze in her high chair, Enzo brought the conversation back to business. There's one more thing you should know, Olivia, about the community initiative. She tensed slightly. What is it? The initiative will be announced at a gala next weekend. As the new director, you would be expected to attend. A gala? Olivia echoed. I don't think I'm ready for that kind of public appearance. You underestimate yourself, Enzo said gently, but there's another reason I want you there. Understanding dawned. Richard and Catherine Montrose will be attending, so will James. Yes, Enzo confirmed. I want him to face the consequences of his actions. And yes, having you there, successful and leading an important initiative, would send a powerful message. It was manipulative, Olivia realized, but also undeniably satisfying to contemplate. After months of feeling powerless, the idea of reclaiming her narrative held a certain appeal. I don't have anything to wear to a gala, she said, the practical concern emerging first. Enzo smiled. Sandra can help with that. She has remarkable connections. As they left the restaurant, Enzo insisted on driving them home. The night air was crisp with approaching winter, and Emma was sound asleep in her carrier. In the warm interior of his car, Olivia found herself studying Enzo's profile as he drove, wondering how much of her initial judgment had been unfair. Why did you really ask me that question yesterday? She said suddenly. Why didn't you ever ask for help? It seems so personal, not like someone just being helpful. Enzo was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the road. Because I meant it personally, he finally said. Olivia, I noticed you when you were working. Your intelligence, your creativity, your genuine passion for your work. They stood out. Olivia stared at him, stunned. I barely knew you. We crossed paths at events, meetings. You probably don't remember. Why would you? But I remember. He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. I wanted to reach out, but it never seemed appropriate. And then suddenly you were engaged, and then gone. The revelation left Olivia speechless. All this time she had assumed she'd been invisible in the professional world, just another worker among many. When I saw you yesterday counting coins for baby formula, Enzo continued, his voice roughening with emotion, I felt like I'd failed somehow. That if I'd found the courage to reach out, things might have been different. They had reached her apartment building. Enzo parked but made no move to exit the car, letting his words hang in the quiet space between them. You couldn't have known, Olivia said finally. I didn't even know what was happening until I was already trapped in it. I know that rationally, he acknowledged, but seeing you again, it felt like a second chance I didn't deserve. Emma stirred in her carrier, breaking the moment with a sleepy murmur. Enzo helped carry her upstairs. The sleeping baby nestled carefully in his arms while Olivia unlocked the door. In the dim light of her apartment, as Enzo gently transferred Emma to her crib, Olivia made her decision. She would take the job. She would attend the gala. She would face James and the Montrose family with her head held high. Not for revenge, but for justice. For herself and for Emma. I'll be at the gala, she told Enzo as they stood in her small living room, and I'll make sure the community initiative is everything you envisioned. His smile was warm, relieved, and something more. Something that sent a flutter of unexpected anticipation through her chest. 1 week, he said, his eyes holding hers. A lot can change in a week. Indeed it could, Olivia thought as she closed the door behind him. In just 24 hours, her world had already shifted on its axis. The night of the gala arrived with breathtaking speed. The week had been a whirlwind of preparations, signing employment contracts, meeting with Sandra to select an appropriate gown, a stunning emerald silk that made Olivia feel like a different person entirely, and arranging for Mrs. Abernathy to watch Emma for the evening. As Enzo escorted her into the grand ballroom, Olivia felt a curious sense of transformation. These were familiar faces in a familiar setting, but she was no longer the person she had been. Sandra had done wonders with her hair and makeup, but Olivia knew the real change was deeper, in the steel that adversity had forged within her. Conversations paused as they entered, curious eyes taking in Enzo's hand at the small of her back, the confident set of her shoulders beneath the emerald silk. Ready? Enzo murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Before she could answer, she saw them across the room. Richard Montrose, impressive in his tuxedo, Catherine, elegant in champagne-colored satin. And between them, looking polished and self-assured, James Barrett. Her ex-husband's eyes met hers across the crowded room, confusion giving way to shock as recognition dawned. Olivia held his gaze steadily, allowing herself one small, knowing smile before turning away. More than ready, she told Enzo, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Let's make this night unforgettable. And as Enzo led her forward to introduce her as the director of the new community initiative, Olivia realized that the coins she'd counted just 1 week ago had led her not to poverty, but to possibility. Sometimes, she thought, the universe worked in mysterious ways, bringing help from unexpected quarters and second chances when they were needed most. Behind her, James Barrett watched in growing dismay as his carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Ahead of her, a future stretched bright with promise, not just for herself but for Emma. And beside her stood Enzo, whose compassion had sparked a chain of events that would change everything. One moment of kindness in a convenience store had led them here. One question, why didn't you ever ask for help, had opened a door she thought forever closed. Olivia raised her glass in a silent toast to new beginnings, to second chances, and to the infinite possibilities that awaited beyond the coins she'd once counted with trembling hands.